So this is the first strategy for assessment, and one of them I like to call student brainstorming. And one of the most important things to do is have students take ownership of the course knowledge early in the course. So it's not just coming from you. The students are owning what they learn, how they learn, and why they learn. So I've heard of a number of faculty who have students actually make up their own final projects. They review the course objectives and brainstorm final projects. It can be a really powerful activity, and it can also be really interesting for the faculty member who has maybe had the same assessment for years and years and years and is not sure how he or she could really change things up. Sometimes switching it around and putting it in the hands of students can be quite powerful. The next assessment strategy I'd like to discuss is the idea of scaffolding materials. And what that means is something we've also talked about when we talked about instruction in the courses, but using graphic organizers, guided notes, or other materials to increase the engagement and success for all students. And what I mean by that is instead of having a student write a paragraph or an essay, have them identify key concepts they've learned using a graphic organizer. It's actually a lot easier to grade, and students sometimes find it easier to kind of give out the information that you've asked them to learn. This slide has an image of a number of kinds of graphics and concept maps, and I encourage you to look online. There's a number of tools who can create these. There's also some blank ones ready and easy to print off. Sometimes students want to make their own, but pictures, charts, maps, graphs, etc., provided as handouts, provided as part of an assessment, can really be useful for students who are visual learners and need to apply certain information in certain strategical ways. There's also a number of digital ones that can include multimedia, including audio and video and things such as that. The next strategy is a really important one. It talks about using examples of good work. And I can't emphasize how important this is. I recently taught a course and I had not had the chance to teach it before. So as I was grading some of the students' assignments, I realized that without me having an example of what good work looked like and without them knowing what an example of good work looked like, it meant that we were not really talking about the same thing and I wasn't able to elevate my expectations. So after I taught the course that first semester, the next semester I had examples of good work, and then the students even improved upon those. And that's one of the things I think sometimes people challenge this and say, well, if I give the students all examples of good work, I'm going to get all that example back to me. And I actually would tell you the opposite. What I would say is show them the example of good work and then ask them how can they improve upon that. And that really means that every semester you can kind of raise the bar of what students are doing in your courses. Next important evaluation strategy is something we like to call authentic assessment. And authentic assessment usually replicates or aligns to a real-world task. Not every content area can do this, but if you actually think about the students in your course preparing themselves for a future area of career or work, they could collect the materials that they're doing in your course and put them in an e-portfolio. I know a lot of departments are creating these now as culminating activities for students going toward their major. Business department, nursing departments, art departments have traditionally created portfolios, but actually now the e-portfolio is becoming really popular throughout institutes of higher education and even in K-12. If you want to know a little bit more about e-portfolios, I have a number of links on that on Think College Learn, but also you can just Google that term and find a lot of really interesting information out there. Self-evaluation is a really important tool in any kind of setting, as far as I'm concerned, and what that means is letting students self-evaluate their work. And I'd also make sure when you do the self-evaluations, you include alternate ways of expression. So if they're not really comfortable filling out a rubric, maybe they could video record themselves, or maybe they could write you a paragraph, or maybe they could just talk to you in office hours. So thinking about the multiple forms of that kind of evaluation is really important. One of the places I find most interesting to do self-evaluation is having students evaluate their own class participation. I know a lot of syllabi say, class participation is X percentage of your grade, whether it's 30% or 10%, and then we don't really have a way of clearly evaluating that. If you have a good rubric, having students self-evaluate where they are in the midpoint in the semester often can then get them thinking about what they need to do to improve their participation for the rest of the semester. And more often than not, when students evaluate their work first, either they're handing in a paper and I have them use the rubric, or if they're self-evaluating class participation, they often grade themselves lower than what I would give them. So it actually can prove to be a really powerful way to get a positive conversation where I'm actually encouraging them and not taking away points. This slide has an image of printed text with a red pen kind of doing some editing and correcting. And I think that is an image that a lot of us still have in our mind when we think about grading students' work. And hopefully some of these suggestions today are going to change that image and maybe put it more into the rubric sense or having students as collaborators within the evaluation process. So while that red pen may create anxiety in us who get kind of overwhelmed with all the grading we need to do in our work, test taking anxiety is a real problem for a lot of students. And so one evaluation strategy or assessment strategy is to provide extended time for all students. Extended time is often a validated accommodation for students with disabilities, but when we've worked with faculty to think about providing extended time to all students, it can really decrease the test-taking anxiety and increase performance of students. There's been a number of studies that have shown that extended test time can really improve the work for everybody. If you want to consider doing this, there's a lot of flags that come up in people that say, oh, I don't have enough time, I can't stay in my classroom that long. I would suggest you do it on kind of a low-risk assignment the first time, like a quiz or something else, and just say, take as long as you need. The truth of it is you will often find out that most students actually do it in less time, because by telling them they don't have to worry about being done in a certain time frame, it actually decreases their anxiety and their performance level can improve.